Hello everyone, I'm Brandon Canaday, Losant's Chief Product Officer, and today I'm bringing you details about our latest platform update. Today is a big one. This update adds what we call service credentials, which is a way to securely store and access third-party credentials within the Losant platform. Service credentials offer three major benefits over application globals, which, before now, was where we used to recommend you store credentials. The first benefit is that service credentials have an extra layer of encryption. Now, all Losant data is encrypted in transit and at rest, and our database backups are also encrypted. Service credentials go through an additional layer of encryption prior to being stored in the database. This means, for example, that if someone were to gain access to our backups and somehow decrypt them, all of your service credentials will still be encrypted by a completely separate encryption key. The second benefit over application globals is that once a credential has been provided to Losant, it can no longer be seen by any user or retrieved from the platform in any way. This is useful for times when you've invited developers, maybe an outside agency, into your Losant organization, but these users should not be able to see your credentials. With service credentials, we've made it impossible for any user, even your organization administrator, to directly view a credential's sensitive information after it's been uploaded. The third benefit is that service credentials are tied to specific cloud services and can only be used to authenticate with that service. They cannot be used for any other purpose. This is important because let's say that we just started hiding application globals as an alternative solution. This would prevent users from seeing a credential stored in a global, but globals can be used anywhere in a workflow. So a member of your organization that wants to act maliciously could just use a workflow with an HTTP node and send a global to their own web server, which would defeat the purpose. Service credentials, on the other hand, can only be used to authenticate against specific services, and the Losant platform handles the authentication process. This means users of your organization, even by building malicious workflows that use your service credentials, can never access the actual credential itself. Let's take a look at an example. Jumping into the platform, you'll find service credentials under the Settings section in the main application nav. Creating a new credential will show the services we currently support. Losant has first-class support for about a dozen different services provided by the major cloud vendors. And since these are the most common third-party services used by our customers, this is where we've started. Creating a service credential for AWS, for example, can be used to authenticate against every AWS service we support, including S3, SQS, and Lambda. Over time, we'll be adding more services to this list. For this example, I created a service credential so I could invoke an AWS Lambda function. For AWS, these credentials are AWS access keys. As a security best practice, it is recommended that you create an IAM user specifically for Losant. This allows you to restrict access to only the specific AWS resources that you need to access from your Losant application. This Lambda node is using that service credential as the authentication parameters. Behind the scenes, this Lambda function is invoking AWS recognition to perform object detection on this image, which has a coffee cup, a hammer, and a spoon. AWS has hundreds of services, and Lambda is one of the most common ways to connect to those services. When I click the virtual button, I'm invoking the Lambda function and sending a path to the image stored in S3. The Lambda function in turn invokes AWS recognition and returns the object detection results back to our workflow. Service credentials are a big step forward in the overall security of the Losant platform. If you're currently using application globals to store credentials for the major cloud vendors, we recommend migrating those to service credentials as soon as you can. And that's it for this update. Make sure to check the blog article for more. There are a lot of other features I didn't mention, and many of them come directly from your feedback. So please keep coming back to the forums and leaving those feature suggestions. Nothing at Losant ships without being fully documented, so you can find information about everything I talked about in our documentation. I'll see you on the next platform update.